The city of Medina was calm that morning, yet everyone felt a sense of heaviness in the air. People moved quietly through the streets, speaking in low voices, as if they knew that something very important was taking place inside the humble home of the Prophet Muhammad. His house was small and simple, built of clay walls and palm branches, yet inside it carried the weight of the entire Ummah. The Prophet had been unwell for several days. His illness had made him weak, and his companions and family members stayed close to him at all times. His beloved wife, Aisha radiallahu anha, cared for him with deep love and devotion. She wiped his blessed forehead with cool water, held his hand gently, and whispered words of comfort. The Prophet bore his illness with patience and dignity, just as he had borne every hardship of his life. Outside his room, the companions waited anxiously. Abu Bakr radiallahu an, Umar radiallahu an, Uthman radiallahu an, Ali radiallahu an, and many others gathered, each praying silently and hoping for his recovery. They had followed him for years, through battles and treaties, through times of hunger and times of victory. Now their hearts trembled as they realized that their beloved messenger was nearing the final chapter of his earthly journey. Even in illness, the Prophet never forgot his duty to his people. When he had the strength, he would ask about the affairs of the community. He reminded them of the importance of prayer, kindness, and justice. He urged them to care for the poor and the needy. Every word he spoke in those final days carried the weight of a last will, as though he was preparing his ummah for the time when he would no longer be among them in this world. The Prophet often asked to be helped to the mosque, even in his weakness. On one occasion, he was supported by 2 men as he entered, and when the companions saw him, their hearts filled with both joy and sorrow. Joy because they could see his blessed face once more, and sorrow because they knew his strength was fading. He led them in prayer with calmness and humility, his voice gentle but firm. That prayer became a memory they would carry for the rest of their lives. At night, when the lamps were dim and the house was quiet, Aisha radiallahu anha noticed moments when the Prophet would gaze upward, his eyes filled with a kind of light and peace she could not describe. It was as if he could see something beyond the reach of others. He whispered words of remembrance, calling upon Allah, and his lips moved with supplications. Those who were near him felt a strange stillness in the air, a presence that could not be explained by ordinary means. The companions began to sense that the end was near. They tried to hide their tears, but their faces showed their grief. Each one of them carried memories of him that no time could erase. They remembered his mercy, his laughter, his patience, and the way he treated everyone with kindness, whether rich or poor, young or old. They knew that no one like him would ever walk the earth again. Still, the Prophet continued to reassure them. He told them to remain steadfast in faith, to hold tightly to the Quran and his teachings, and to stay united as one ummah. His voice, though weak, was filled with sincerity and love. These final instructions were like seeds planted in their hearts, seeds that would grow and guide the generations to come. As the days passed, the atmosphere in Medina grew heavier. People prayed constantly. Children asked their parents why the Prophet was unwell, and mothers whispered words of comfort, though their own eyes were full of tears. The whole city seemed to live in anticipation, knowing that the most beloved of all creation was preparing to return to his Lord. And in those sacred moments, unseen to many, a gentle presence began to draw nearer. The angel Azrael, the angel of death, was approaching, not with harshness but with honor, ready to carry out the command of Allah in the most dignified way. As the days of illness grew longer, the companions and family of the Prophet felt the weight of sorrow settle upon their hearts. The air in Medina was heavy, and the streets were filled with whispers of concern. Every household prayed, every heart trembled. For everyone knew that the messenger of Allah was preparing to return to his Lord. Inside his blessed house, the Prophet lay resting, surrounded by those who loved him the most. Aisha radiallahu anha remained by his side with patience and devotion. She brought him water when his throat was dry, and she held him when his body felt weak. Sometimes she leaned close and asked softly if he wished for anything, and he would simply reply with remembrance of Allah. His lips never ceased to move in dhikr, for his connection with his Lord was unbroken even in his weakest hours. At times, the Prophet would gather enough strength to address the companions who visited him. His words were not long, but they carried deep meaning. He reminded them of the importance of salah, repeating again and again that prayer must never be abandoned. He urged them to treat one another with mercy, to look after the poor, and to never allow division to break the unity of the Ummah. Each reminder felt like a farewell gift, a treasure to be protected and passed on. The companions, though heartbroken, listened with full attention. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh wept quietly when he heard the Prophet's voice tremble with weakness, yet his words remained strong. Umar radiallahu anh clenched his hands and held back his tears, trying to remain firm before others. Ali radiallahu anh, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet, stayed close and offered every kind of service, whether bringing water or lifting his blessed body when needed. Uthman radiallahu anh, known for his modesty, sat in silence, his eyes lowered, overwhelmed with grief. Each companion was experiencing a sorrow deeper than any battle or hardship they had ever faced. Outside, people came to the mosque asking for news. Children stood quietly by their fathers, sensing the seriousness of the moment, though they could not fully understand it. Women prayed in their homes with tears on their faces. The whole city lived with a kind of silence, as if all of Medina was waiting for what was to come. One morning, the Prophet asked to be helped into the mosque. Though weak, he wished to be among his people once more. Supported by two companions, he entered slowly. When the people saw him, their faces lit up with joy. The entire mosque filled with emotion. The Prophet sat and addressed them with a voice that was faint, yet filled with authority. He praised Allah and reminded them to remain firm upon Islam. He told them to stay united, to obey Allah and His Messenger, and to treat one another as brothers and sisters. His words brought comfort, but at the same time, they made the companions realize that this was indeed farewell. Later, back in his home, the Prophet rested again. At times, his face showed signs of great pain, and at other times it was filled with a light and peace that calmed those around him. Aisha radiallahu anha noticed moments when he would look upward, his eyes fixed on something unseen. His lips would move in whispers of prayer, as though he was speaking to one beyond the reach of this world. She felt in her heart that angels were near, and she was right, for the angel Azrael, the angel of death, was drawing closer with the permission of Allah. Unlike the way Azrael comes for ordinary souls, this was no ordinary departure. This was the soul of the most beloved of all creation. The angel did not approach suddenly or harshly, but gently and with honor, waiting for the command of Allah. It is said that Azrael sought permission before entering. This was unlike his mission with any other human being, for the Prophet was given dignity in life and in death. The angel of death entered with a presence so calm and so pure that those who were near felt it in their hearts, though they could not see with their eyes. The atmosphere in the room changed, and the companions and family sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. The Prophet looked upward and smiled faintly, as though he saw something beautiful. Aisha radiallahu anha, watching closely, later described how his face would glow at times during those final moments. It was as if he was already in conversation with those from the unseen world. His lips moved gently, and those near him could hear him saying words of submission, words of trust in his Lord. The angel Azrael stood with respect, not like a taker of souls, but like a servant awaiting the command of Allah. He was ready to fulfill his duty, but he knew that this moment was unlike any other in the history of creation. This was the departure of the seal of the prophets, the mercy to all worlds, the one whom Allah had chosen above all mankind. In those sacred moments, time seemed to stand still. The companions outside the house waited in silence. Inside, the family watched every breath, every whisper, every movement of the prophet. The unseen world was now drawing closer to the seen, for the barrier between this life and the next was about to open. The prophet, in his final strength, raised his eyes and spoke words that were clear and full of meaning. He declared his trust in Allah, his love for the highest company of angels, and his readiness to meet his Lord. His heart had no fear, only peace. His body was weak, but his soul was strong. He was preparing to step into eternity, and as the angel Azrael drew nearer, the conversation between the prophet and the unseen world began to unfold, a conversation that was filled with honor, mercy, and the promise of eternal peace. The room of the prophet was silent except for the soft sound of his breathing. His family sat close, their hearts heavy, their eyes filled with tears. Aisha radiallahu anha watched over him with love and care, holding his blessed hand and whispering gentle words. Around him, the companions entered and left quietly, each longing to be near their beloved messenger in these final hours. The prophet looked upward with a calm expression. His lips moved with remembrance of Allah. Then, in that sacred silence, the angel Azrael came closer with the permission of Allah. Unlike the way souls are usually taken, this moment was filled with mercy and dignity. Azrael approached with respect, greeting the messenger of Allah in a manner no human eye could see. But the prophet could feel Azrael spoke with gentleness. For this was the soul most honored by Allah. He said that Allah had sent him with a choice. The prophet could choose to remain in this world a little longer, or he could choose to leave and join the highest company with his Lord. The prophet, even in his weakness, understood clearly. He had spent his entire life serving the message of Islam. He had completed his mission, delivered the Quran, and guided his people. Now his heart longed for the nearness of Allah. With peace and certainty, he whispered, choosing the highest companionship, saying, O Allah, with the highest companions. Aisha radiallahu anha later described this moment. She said she saw his face filled with light, as if he was seeing something beyond this world. His eyes followed something beautiful, something unseen, and his lips moved with words of trust and surrender. It was as though he was already standing between this world and the next, speaking with angels who had come to welcome him. The companions in the house could not see the angel Azrael, but they felt a presence. The air itself seemed to change. A calmness filled the room, even as their grief grew deeper. They knew that the messenger of Allah was being honored in a way no one else would ever experience. As the prophet lay in Aisha's lap, he continued to whisper prayers. His last concern was for his ummah. He reminded them to remain steadfast in their prayers. He urged them to treat one another with kindness. Even as his soul was preparing to depart, he thought of his people and their future. The angel Azrael, with gentleness, waited for the final command of Allah. There was no rush, no force, only patience and honor. This was not just the taking of a soul. This was the most beloved soul returning to its creator. The angels of mercy surrounded the room, unseen by human eyes, ready to receive him with peace. Then came the moment when the veil between this world and the next grew thin. The prophet's breathing slowed, his eyes lifted upward, and his face shone with tranquility. Aisha radiallahu anha held him closer, and the companions felt their hearts tremble. His final words were a testimony of faith, a return to the one who had sent him. With gentleness beyond measure, the angel Azrael carried out his duty. The soul of Muhammad, the mercy to mankind, the light of guidance left this world in peace. It was not taken with pain, but with honor, as if being invited to a place of eternal rest. At that moment, the world changed forever. The house of the prophet was filled with silence, broken only by the sound of tears. The companions wept openly, their hearts shattered, for they had lost the one they loved more than themselves. Yet at the same time, they felt a strange peace, knowing that their messenger had been received by his Lord in the highest company. The conversation with the angel Azrael had ended, but its meaning would remain forever. It was not a conversation of fear, but of mercy and choice, a reminder that even in death, the Prophet was given honor above all creation. His decision to join the highest companions was his final act of submission to Allah, the completion of a life lived in service to his Lord. Outside the house, Medina fell into grief. Word spread quickly, and soon the entire city was crying. Men, women, and children wept together. They felt as if the light of the earth had been taken away. Yet in their sorrow, they also felt the weight of responsibility, for the messenger had left them with guidance. With the Quran and with his Sunnah inside, the companions sat in silence, unable to speak, their tears flowing freely. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, though broken with grief, would soon stand before the people to remind them that while Muhammad had passed away, Allah, the ever-living, would never die. But at this moment the hearts of all were heavy, and the room still carried the sacred peace of what had just taken place. The final moments of the Prophet were not only the end of a life, but the completion of a mission. He had delivered the message, fulfilled his duty, and now he had returned to his Lord with honor. His departure was a reminder to all believers that this life is temporary, and that the real home is with Allah. The passing of the Prophet Muhammad left Medina in deep sorrow. The city that once echoed with his voice and his footsteps now fell into silence. The companions and family who had lived every moment under his guidance could hardly believe that their beloved messenger had returned to his Lord. Tears filled every home, and the streets of Medina were heavy with grief. Inside his blessed house, the companions sat in shock. Some could not hold back their cries, while others remained silent, their hearts trembling. Aisha radiallahu anha wept as she recalled the final moments, her lap still carrying the memory of the Prophet's head resting upon it. Ali radiallahu anhu stayed close, overcome with emotion yet firm in his love and loyalty. Umar radiallahu anhu, unable to accept the reality, raised his voice and declared that the Prophet could not be gone. His grief was too heavy to bear, and he could not imagine life without the messenger. At that moment, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu entered. His heart was broken like everyone else, but his faith gave him strength. He went to the blessed body of the Prophet, uncovered his noble face, and kissed him gently. With tears streaming down his cheeks, he whispered that the messenger was beautiful in life and beautiful in death. Then he covered him again and turned to the people. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stood before the companions and gave words that would remain etched in history. He reminded them that whoever worshipped Muhammad should know that Muhammad had passed away, but whoever worshipped Allah should know that Allah is ever living and never dies. These words settled the hearts of the companions, reminding them that their faith must remain firm even after the departure of their beloved Prophet. The people of Medina wept openly, but they began to find strength in the reminder that the message of Islam would live on. The Quran was still with them, the teachings of the Prophet were still with them, and the mission of spreading the light of Islam was now their responsibility. His passing was not the end of his message, but the beginning of their test. The companions then prepared for the burial. They washed his blessed body with utmost care and respect. The fragrance of musk filled the room, and they wept as they carried out each step. They wrapped him in simple white shrouds, as he had instructed, and the house was filled with both sorrow and reverence. No leader in history had been honored in this way, with every act performed out of pure love and devotion. When the time came, they laid him to rest in the very room where he had passed away, beside the mosque that had been the heart of his mission in Medina. The earth that received him was honored beyond measure, for it became the resting place of the best of all creation. Outside, the Ummah gathered. People embraced one another, seeking comfort. They cried together, but they also reminded one another of the Prophet's final words and instructions. Prayer, unity, mercy, and steadfastness in faith became the guiding light for them in the dark moment of loss. As the days passed, the companions began to realize the weight of their responsibility. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was chosen as the first caliph, and under his leadership the community found stability. The message of Islam continued to spread far beyond Medina, reaching lands and people who had never seen the Prophet, but who came to love him through his words and teachings. Though the Prophet was no longer with them in body, his presence remained in their hearts. Every prayer, every verse recited, every act of kindness reminded them of him. They carried his sunnah in their daily lives, teaching their children and grandchildren about the man who had brought them out of darkness and into light. His final moments became a lesson of patience, faith, and surrender to Allah's will. The conversation with the angel Azrael was a moment unlike any other in history. It was not a conversation of fear, but of peace and honor. The Prophet was given the choice, and he chose to be with the highest company, showing once again his complete trust in Allah. This choice was the final seal upon a life lived in full submission to the Creator. Generations to come would hear these stories and find strength. They would know that the Messenger of Allah lived with mercy and left this world with dignity. His death was a reminder that even the greatest of men must return to their Lord, and that the true journey is not in this world, but in the life to come. The companions eventually found comfort in knowing that while they had lost his physical presence, they had not lost his guidance. The Quran remained, his teachings remained, and above all, the promise of meeting him again in the hereafter remained. This hope gave them strength to carry on, to spread Islam with devotion and sacrifice, and to live as he had taught them. The final moments of the Prophet were filled with love, mercy, and faith. His passing was the greatest sorrow for the Ummah, yet it was also the greatest reminder that life is temporary and that the true goal is to return to Allah. His legacy became a light that would never fade, guiding hearts for all time.